This is Cairo, and you'll never guess what these are for. It's a public water fountain. The clay jars are porous, allowing the contents to slowly evaporate and keeping the water cool. Good Samaritans fill them up each day, or their more modern counterpart. The water is generally clean and safe, but you have to share the cups. Even stray cats are not forgotten. There's a side of Egypt that you've seen before, and a side that you have not. My name is Karin Muller. For most Westerners, Egypt is little more than pyramids and revolutions, a place that too often leaves us filled with fear and misinformation. So I decided to go to Egypt, alone, for 3 months, to live with Bedouin nomads, Nile fishermen, and Cairo's garbage collectors, and see what Egyptians and Islam are really like. I had no idea what I was getting into. Late at night, an unseen army scurries through Cairo's streets, quietly collecting and then hauling away over 5 million pounds of garbage. They are the Zabalin. The word means garbage people in Egyptian Arabic. They are all Coptic Christians, and 60,000 of them live in Cairo, many in Mokattam, nicknamed Garbage City. The Zabalin are among the poorest people in Egypt. Until recently, Garbage City had no water, sewage, or electricity. Despite this fact, the Zabalin have managed to create one of the most efficient recycling systems in the world. They reuse over 85% of the garbage they collect from over 12 million people. Each family has its established route, handed down through generations. Because most of the Zabalin's income comes from recycling, they charge little or nothing to haul away the garbage. In fact, they often pay the building owners for the right to collect trash from their tenants. Once home, the women and girls do almost all the sorting. It takes 10 to 12 hours a day, even when everyone pitches in. The Zabalin tend to have big families, since they need lots of extra hands. Initially, the garbage gets separated into general categories: paper, plastic, cardboard, and metal, and then resorted into astonishingly specific piles. You can tell a lot about a city from its garbage. Since they don't wear gloves, tetanus is a constant threat. And nearly half of the Zabalin test positive for hepatitis. Given their environment and poor hygiene, they get sick a lot. All organic waste is fed to pigs. This is why the Coptic Christians have a monopoly on trash collection. Egypt's 80 million Muslims don't eat pork. Pigs are the Zabalin's main source of income. A 6-month-old piglet, destined for the tourist resorts, will earn the zabalin almost $100. In April 2009, disaster struck Egypt's garbage collectors when the first case of swine flu appeared in Mexico. Even though no Egyptian ever caught the virus, the government ordered every last pig in the entire country to be slaughtered. Without pigs, the recycling industry was unsustainable. Garbage piled up on Cairo's streets with nobody to collect it. The children of the zabalin suffered most, since pork was their only affordable animal protein. Families banded together to try raising other livestock, without much success. They are only now beginning to rebuild their herds. Luckily, the zabalin have a few other ways to earn a living. Some of the materials they collect, like plastic bottles, can be resold to factories as far away as China. But first, they have to be compressed. So they get handed over to a family that specializes in crushing plastic. It's basically just a metal container with some homemade modifications. You want to watch your fingers around here. They actually sort by brand. This comes from the American pile. The kids start helping out when they turn 5 or 6 years old. By the time they're 8, they practically run the show. There is one thing in the garbage that's worth its weight in gold. Second-hand oil cans. They get flattened and used to fix roofs and walls. But the zabalin do more than just sort garbage. They turn it into raw materials, ready for manufacturing. But first, it has to be cleaned and prepped. The plastic bags are shredded, then washed. It's not a job you'd want. It's hot and dirty. But the result is clean and dry and ready to be sold to another family-owned business in Garbage City, where it is mixed with calcium carbonate and fed into yet another machine. Keeping it running and unclogged is a full-time job. They produce several tons of plastic goo per day. It's then extruded like spaghetti and run through a water bath to cool. And finally, chopped into tiny pellets, ready to be reincarnated as plastic hangers, chairs, or spoons. Some zabalin have even started manufacturing for themselves. The job is incredibly hot and dangerous. They don't wear gloves, just the occasional rag or two. But at least it means the younger men are learning skills that can one day take them out of the garbage trade. Despite their hard work and success, the Egyptian government just wants the zabalin to go away. They are an eyesore, a visible reminder of Egypt's lack of development. So one day, the government started giving contracts to foreign companies to collect Cairo's trash. But the large foreign trucks couldn't fit through Cairo's narrow streets. And residents didn't want to bring their trash out to central bins. Filth once again began to pile up throughout Cairo. Eventually, the multinational companies tried to hire the Zabalin to collect their trash for them, for less than half of what they earned when they were working for themselves. And because the foreign contractors recycle almost nothing, Cairo's landfills are quickly filling up. Organic waste that could have fed the pigs. Plastic bottles, tires, wood, and shoes. So much that could have been reused, left to rot, or blow away in the wind. The few hardy souls who managed to get out this far barely make a dent. As if that weren't enough, the government has decided to relocate the Zabalin 15 miles outside of Cairo, too far away to collect the city's trash. But the Zabalin are nothing if not resourceful, and they have made a few friends. The Association for the Protection of the Environment has been working with the Zabalin for over 20 years. They've even planted a garden so that the children can see what flowers look like, grow some fruit and vegetables, and occasionally glimpse a bird or two. The association also runs a daycare center, and most importantly, a school. It may not have the most modern furniture, but the children, including girls, learn to read and write. And they eat lunch for free. More than anything, the Zabalin rely on their extended families. Mokattam is a close-knit community, one of the few places in Egypt where Coptics are in the majority and can freely practice their faith. In 1975, the Zabalin built the enormous monastery of St. Simon of the Tanners. It's the largest Coptic church in the Middle East. Its amphitheater, carved out of the mountainside, can seat over 20,000 people. Many Zabalin say they choose to live here, even if they didn't collect garbage for a living. Despite the stench, the flies, and pigs, Mokattam is like any other Egyptian neighborhood. People fly kites and try to steal each other's pigeons. Their children play soccer, and everybody watches TV. They celebrate their holidays and each other. Their little corner of Cairo is simply home. They're not alone. Greater Cairo is the largest city in all of Africa, with a population of 22 million people. To Egyptians, Cairo is ad-Dunya, the mother of the world. the central character in Egypt's play. Spread along the banks of the Nile and surrounded by desert, over 60% of Cairo is developed in a completely unregulated free-for-all. People just arrive and find a spot to shoehorn in another apartment. Where do they build? Straight up. Every rooftop is just a floor for the next arrival. It's actually a good way to avoid corrupt inspectors. Around here, building permits cost a bundle. Since it almost never rains in Cairo, a roof is optional. But life isn't easy when you live this close together. Too many buildings in too little space means most interior apartments don't have a single window. Instead, they build narrow shafts down the center of the buildings to catch a little light and the hope of a breeze. The rooftop is where you want to be. Some squatters have even built simple toilets and showers and brought in some greenery. But unplanned growth has other consequences. Streets are often too narrow for an ambulance or fire truck, and traffic is in perpetual gridlock. No one leaves room for schools, hospitals, or police stations, let alone parks or even trees. Though they always fit in a corner mosque or two. And, of course, coffee houses. Despite the noise, pollution, chaos, and crowds, they've managed to create a village atmosphere. They even have a committee in charge of decorating for Ramadan. Kids play out in the street, despite the summer heat. Small businesses thrive, from vegetables to handmade scales. And, of course, the local barbershop. It's the center for village gossip and politics. With unemployment skyrocketing and unrest everywhere, these poor neighborhoods are the first to be radicalized. Even in the best of times, foreigners are not welcome here. In an effort to solve the city's growing overpopulation, the government has zoned 8 new towns outside of Cairo, smack in the middle of the desert. Here the roads are wide and smooth. There's no traffic and plenty of parking. There's even a tree or two. The government already put in all the infrastructure: sewage, electricity, and water at incredible expense, and then built tens of thousands of apartments, most of which have been standing empty for so long that they're falling apart. Some of Cairo's new towns have only 20% occupancy. It's because there are so few jobs out here and no public transportation. But a few areas have become wealthy enclaves, luxurious, gated communities hidden behind walls of manicured greenery, with swimming pools, water-intensive lawns, and lots of flowers. People to trim your hedges, collect your garbage, and country club membership. And most importantly, malls. Filled with American franchises. You can understand why Egyptians sometimes feel overwhelmed by Western brands. So where do you go if you're not living in a gated community, but still need to get away for an afternoon? Al-Azhar Park, built appropriately on a garbage dump. It's one of the few places that families can picnic on a weekend and enjoy a bit of greenery. For some children, it's their first experience with real live grass. It's also a great place to people watch. Families enjoying the day together. Fathers with their kids. Single men and women hanging out in packs. Everyone, from women in full burqas to the younger, more liberal crowd. Though maybe they should be a bit more discreet. Al-Azhar Park overlooks Islamic Cairo. It's one of the world's oldest Islamic cities, founded over 1,000 years ago. Though once through its ancient gates, you'll find plenty of modern commerce in its shadows. Preparations start at dawn for the daily tourist hordes. But behind the scenes, its back streets haven't changed much since Muhammad's time. The day still begins with the smell of freshly baked bread, delivered by an army of young boys to every house and hovel, and beyond. In Egypt, the common word for bread, aish, is also the word for life. Egyptians eat more bread per capita than any other nation. Some 20,000 small bakeries sell the puffy pita loaves for about a penny apiece, less than 15% of the cost of their ingredients. For decades, flour and fuel have been heavily subsidized in Egypt. It's the modern version of bread and circus, a governmental bribe to keep the masses fed and entertained. But it comes at a considerable price. Artificially holding down the price of food and energy eats up more than a quarter of Egypt's budget. In desperation, the government has started slashing subsidies. It's a risky move. The last time they tried it, there were riots in the streets. But there is one thing in Cairo that nobody complains about. The metro is universally loved. It has saved the city from complete paralysis. When it gets hot, the population escapes underground. In this often chaotic city, the metro is something of a miracle. Efficient and orderly, Egyptians often say it's the only thing in Cairo that never breaks down, even in the middle of a revolution. It's extremely inexpensive. A metro ride costs 1 Egyptian pound, about 16 cents. And best of all, it's air-conditioned. Almost 4 million people ride Cairo's subways every day. It's one of only 2 metro systems in all of Africa. On every train, the 4th and 5th cars are reserved for women. It's meant to protect them from sexual harassment, and has made the subway one of the safest forms of transport in Egypt. Though the women can push just as hard as the men. Mostly they chat comfortably with each other, or read the Quran. Though they do insist their carriage smells much better than the men's. The metro isn't the only way to get around. Cairo boasts everything from buses to donkey carts, though neither are particularly reliable. For short hauls outside the city, a tuk-tuk is a great choice. For longer journeys up or down the Nile, the train is the way to go. The only thing you really don't want to do in Cairo is drive. There are no lanes per se. Cars just seem to flow. Though more often than not, it's stop and go. Even ambulances don't get a break. The few traffic cops quickly get lost in the shuffle and eventually give up. Though the rules are, in fact, pretty straightforward. If you can get halfway through an intersection, then you have the right of way. You can also just convince everyone that you're not about to stop. Or if you can get enough cars to follow you. On the upside, if you miss your exit, it's okay to drive the wrong way down a major highway. Though you're not supposed to tell anyone. In fact, you can drive the wrong way down almost any street, as long as your car is facing in the right direction. Or just flash your lights. This is a one-way street. The only thing more dangerous than driving is trying to cross the street. Once you start, don't stop. In Cairo, pedestrians do not have right of way. But driving is only part of the equation. If you arrive in one piece, then you still need to find a place to park your car. Parking spots can be awfully tight. But entrepreneurial Egyptians have once again stepped in to fill the need. Munadis are self-appointed car parkers. They stake out a spot along the city's more congested streets and operate on tips. They even take phone reservations. They'll also protect your car from packs of roving youth, help you in and out of traffic, and even give you a push start if that's what you need. All for about $1 a night. If you do happen to own a new car, enjoy it while you can, because it's not going to stay that way for very long. Cairo is very hard on cars. Most people buy their vehicles in dusty, second-hand markets on the outskirts of the city. It's a mixed bag. And buyer beware. All sales are final. Not surprisingly, a lot of cars in Cairo break down. Luckily, there are plenty of places you can take it for open-air repair. If the situation is more serious, these guys can fix almost anything. They perform miracles with little more than a pair of calipers, a dial indicator, and an ancient metal lathe. And if they can't fix it, there's an entire district in Cairo that sells second-hand parts. In Egypt, almost nothing goes to waste. You can even turn your Kia into a BMW. When all else fails, your car can have a whole new life as a street stand. Of course, the hottest ride in town didn't always come with a steering wheel. Less than 100 years ago, camels were the only way to get around. In Bir Ash, just 35 kilometers outside of Cairo, they still hold the largest camel market in the Middle East. Hundreds of animals will be bought and sold by 10 a.m. They want to finish before the heat sets in. The camels come from as far away as Somalia, though many are brought up the 40-day road from Western Sudan, an ancient trade route dating back to the 1300s. If they don't get sold in Upper Egypt, then they get loaded into trucks for the 24-hour drive to Cairo. Though getting them off again can be quite a challenge. They're 1,000 pounds apiece and stubborn, and can be aggressive when provoked. But then, their owners aren't afraid to draw a little blood either. This is no place for the faint of heart. Once here, they get traded for cash and other livestock, or auctioned off for farm work or meat. The men force them to move around to prove they're not lame. They also check their feet, teeth, eyes, and skin. A large and healthy working animal can go for upwards of $500 US. The less lucky ones are sold by weight, and will go straight to the slaughterhouse. It's a male-only business and a relatively rough crowd. These men live for camels, even though other kinds of livestock have a higher profit margin. Like the pyramids, camels are a point of pride, a part of their collective heritage. Once you've bought your piece of Egyptian history, you still have to get it home. Business is done on a handshake, and sales recorded on slips of paper, with payments made in cash some days later. Once the work is done and the day turns white hot, it's time to pull off their shoes, sit in the shade, and smoke a shisha pipe or two. This is the highlight of their week, the chance to get together and shoot the breeze. Before the afternoon call to prayer. If they've done well in their morning's negotiations, they can even buy a few luxuries from the local vendors, or pick up some camel milk for the kids. Supposedly good for strength and virility, and the immune system. For those who can afford it, there's lunch at the local dive. The menu includes boiled eggs and bean soup, fries, hummus, deep-fried falafel, and lots of flies. And then it's time to head out to the all-important Friday sermon. You really should go with them, because you'll never understand Egypt if you don't understand Islam. For most Egyptians, faith permeates their lives, and the center of Islam is the mosque. It's more than just a place of worship. It's a sanctuary. Whether you're an office worker, a homeless man, or just looking for a place to hang out and dry some clothes. Islam rests on 5 pillars. They're a set of commandments that every good Muslim should strive to follow. You must believe that God is the only deity and that Muhammad is his messenger. You must pray at least 5 times a day, no matter how tired you are. And once a year, you must fast for an entire month. For the 30 days of Ramadan, Muslims are not allowed to eat, drink, smoke, or have sex from dawn till dusk. That's particularly difficult when Ramadan falls in the middle of Egypt's scorchingly hot summer. Why fast at all? So that you know what it's like to be poor and hungry. It's meant to encourage empathy. Fasting is obligatory for adult Muslims, unless they are ill, pregnant, or menstruating. All good deeds count double during Ramadan, especially giving alms. One popular way to be charitable is to sponsor a mercy meal. Businessmen will put out tables and cook up a whole mess of food, and anyone who shows up eats for free. You don't have to be Muslim, and you don't even have to be poor. But for all Muslims, iftar, the breaking of the fast each evening, is a chance to celebrate faith and family, make new friends, and partake of special Ramadan foods. Though those last few minutes before 7 p.m. can seem like an eternity, nobody's had anything to eat or drink since 3:30 a.m. In many ways, Ramadan is like Christmas and Thanksgiving, all rolled into one. Decorations appear on every house and corner, mostly in the shape of fanus, Ramadan lanterns. It's traditional to buy a new one every year, like choosing a Christmas tree. Parents dig into their meager savings to buy toys for the children. Specialty food sellers pop up on every corner for those who don't have time to cook. Even though this is supposed to be a month of fasting, twice as much food gets consumed during Ramadan than any other time of year. Women spend long days in tiny kitchens, preparing that all-important evening meal. Zucchini, chicken stew, stuffed grape leaves, boiled beef, the ultimate Egyptian comfort foods. Afterwards, there's time to relax and let your hair down. At its heart, Ramadan is a celebration of family. But in Egypt, Islam isn't just about fasting and prayer. In fact, this mosque in Cairo has a workout gym.
Islam say we must do sport. We must everybody do sport.
Though childhood obesity probably wasn't an issue the Prophet had to worry about. The mosque also offers archery and yoga, but by far the most popular after-school activity is their boxing club. It keeps the young men out of trouble and teaches them hard work, discipline, and good sportsmanship. The one thing they're not required to do is join in the nightly prayers. Even though it's a mosque, Christians are welcome. When it comes to sports, Islam, they say, does not discriminate. But perhaps most unexpectedly of all, the mosque also supports a theater group. They put on several performances each year, written and directed by this man, the unstoppable Muhammad. He casts both men and women, old and young. And works hard to bring out the best in each and every one of them. They clearly adore him. All too soon, it's opening night, and the girls are really nervous. The solution, apparently, is makeup, and plenty of it. Even purple hair. Not what you'd expect from a mosque-supported theater group. A A headscarf is completely optional. To them, it's just a fashion choice, not a religious statement. And the play begins. They're clearly not afraid to take on tough social issues. There's a story about a drug kingpin and his addicted acolyte. Domestic violence. Alcohol, which is forbidden by the Quran. Sexuality, both girls and boys. Prostitution. Street kids, with plenty of dramatic monologues. And most surprisingly of all, politics, and they don't pull any punches. The people, happy and carefree. A country united, then torn apart. And the horror and bloodshed that followed. Little do they know that Cairo will soon be bathed in blood again. But not all of Egypt is gearing up for revolution. 250 miles southeast of Cairo, Hurghada was once a poor fishing village, barely scratching a living out of the sea along Egypt's barren eastern coast. Until it was discovered by developers. 25 years of frantic construction later, Hurghada is now one of Egypt's premier resort areas. A 20-mile-long, dense band of concrete on the fabled Red Sea, where tourists can enjoy its crystalline waters, warm sand, swimming pools, souvenirs, and all sorts of high-end water sports. Or just hang out and do nothing at all. Unlike most of Egypt, Hurghada boasts impossibly clean streets, Western hospitals, schools, and malls. But Hurghada is best known for its coral reefs. The Red Sea is a paradise for anyone who loves the ocean. From those putting a toe into the water for the first time to experienced scuba divers. But all that luxury comes at a price. Unrestrained construction has polluted the crystal clear waters that brought the tourists here in the first place. Over 1,000 pleasure boats are now seriously damaging the reefs. That's why the Hurghada Environmental Protection and Conservation Association decided to step in. They didn't necessarily want to limit tourism because all those snorkelers become potential Red Sea advocates. But they realized that boats' anchors were destroying the reefs, so HEPCA started putting down permanent moorings. It has since turned into a full-time job to check and replace over 1,000 moorings and drill new ones. On a shoestring budget. But they've managed to earn the respect of both the fishermen and tour operators alike. Damage to the reefs is now close to zero. And there are other unexpected benefits. Mustafa is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Ayman is a Coptic Christian. Their love of the ocean supersedes their religious differences. If only all of Egypt could learn from their example. Unfortunately, damaged reefs aren't the only downside to tourism. All those resorts are generating an awful lot of trash, much of which ends up strewn across the desert. But one group of locals has suffered more than any other from the recent construction boom. They have herded goats and camels among the rocky sands of North Africa and the Middle East since time immemorial. Their name means desert nomad in Arabic. They are the Bedouin. Fiercely loyal to family and tribe, they live by a strong code of honor. Red Sea developers took the Bedouins' best land, and now they struggle to maintain their traditions and scratch a living out of the desert sands. They drink a heavily sweetened coffee made from fresh roasted beans and spiced with cardamom. Her name is Ahmed. She has no idea how old she is, only that she was born in the desert and wants to be buried beneath its rocky soil. Her 3 sons have taken jobs at nearby Red Sea resorts. One has even earned enough to buy a truck. He sends his 2 sons to spend weekends with their grandmother in the hopes that she will teach them the Bedouin way of life before it is completely lost. Ahmed is happy to put them both to work raising pigeons and herding goats. Though she may be more innovative than anyone gave her credit for. Recently, she cut an unusual deal to use her goats in an entirely new role: recycling garbage. Hepka delivers trash from the tourist resorts along the Red Sea, and the goats get down to business. They eat everything, from grass clippings to toilet paper. Nothing seems to faze them. Is there any corner of the world that Western garbage hasn't reached? While the goats are making short work of anything organic, the Bedouins scoop up all the recyclables. Even though it's over 105 degrees. It's a hard life, but in some ways, Ahmed is actually better off than she was before. The income from recycling allows her to buy all-important water containers for her flock, coolers for herself, a refrigerator, and clothes. Most importantly, her grandchildren are going to school. Though in the process, she has given up the safety of her nomadic life for an uncertain future. Every time there's unrest in faraway Cairo, Hurghada's tourist industry comes to a crashing halt. Hotel occupancy can drop as low as 3%. Fewer tourists mean less trash and less income for the Bedouin, but also less damage to the reefs. Revolution may be bad for the economy, but it's good for the fish. Next time on Egypt's Secret Side, the unexpected face of Islam and the human side of revolution.